All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Pfeiffer. I'm the host of Conversations on Retail. We are here today with Keith Aubele of Nav1gate. Keith, how are you?
I'm doing great, Matt. It's good to see you after all these years.
Been a long time. In fact, you're one of those guys that I really admired growing up as a young man at Walmart. Saw you and your team certainly at the forefront of the organization, but never really had any direct, interaction. So I've really looked forward to this conversation for a number of reasons. You and I went to the same university, and obviously, did a lot during the same time at Walmart. But before we dig into backstory, I'd love for you just to talk a little bit about Nav1gate and what it is that you and your team do today.
Well, thanks, Matt. Sure. Nav1gate is an organization that I began after I left the Home Depot. And essentially, what we do is work with companies, retailers, we work with solution providers, and we work with businesses that are trying to grow, expand, and become more profitable. So we have a number of clients here in the US and globally. I work, for instance, with the retailer Sheets. It's located in the Northeast part of the country, have for a number of years. Plus, I have some premier solution providers that Nav1gate partners with to help them get navigated through the retail vertical, which is how we came up with the name. But we've been in business for 20 years and things are going strong, and we're trying to make people's day even brighter.
Yeah, that's great. I had been under the impression for the longest time that because you went to college in Southwest Missouri, and then, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but you had a little bit of a law enforcement career in Southwest Missouri. I had long been under the impression that you grew up in Southwest Missouri, but that's not the case. Take us back to childhood. Tell us about, your upbringing and kind of the path from there to university and Air Force.
You bet. So I had a very non-traditional upbringing. I was a product of divorced parents when I was a younger kid. About 9 years old, I had a 5-year-old brother, and my parents kind of went rogue after the divorce and tried to do their best by placing us with family members, which only lasted for a short period of time. And then we ended up with friends, and then we ended up with friends of their friends, and then we ended up somewhat homeless and in the foster care system. So my brother and I, basically, the two of us, had to once again navigate a very challenging upbringing without a lot of direct supervision, without a lot of parenting, and without really guidance on how we were going to come up with our next meal. So I lost contact with my mother for over 7 years. So my brother and I made it happen, and it's really remarkable, Matt, when he and I look back at our lives, how we've been able to utilize that experience as our tackling fuel, if I can steal a line from the Water Boy. And that's how we were able to become not only successful in business, he retired from PepsiCo, but successful as human beings, I believe, parenting, being good partners to our spouses and those types of things. So I'm excited that I can share this story because it's important for people to know that just because you take a couple licks early on doesn't mean that it's going to define negatively your outcome. You can turn that into positive energy, which is what we try to do.
Yeah.
So from
So
there,
what was your,
yeah,
go ahead, please.
I was going to say from there, I graduated from high school. I tried college one semester, found what was a ROTC fraternity, and that changed my life for two reasons. One, I partied a lot and failed college in my first semester. And two, it introduced me to the US Air Force. So instead of continuing my college education, I enlisted, went into combat crew communications as a air traffic controller. And after 6 years came out, used the GI Bill to not only get my undergraduate degree at Missouri Southern, but then after I joined with Walmart, I was able to complete my master's degree from Troy University in Alabama, all on the GI Bill. So for me, that was another great decision that I had not planned, that happened due to mistakes that I had made in my life.
Yeah, well, it's my sense you probably grew up an awful lot during those 6 years in the Air Force. What was that experience like? And talk about mentors and some of the experiences that you had that maybe the most profoundly changed you in the direction of your life.
The Air Force was transformational because here it took a kid that really didn't have a lot of structure and created immediate structure. I recommend the military really for anybody, especially someone who's second guessing college. It's a great way to go in and you have your paths of a career in the military, or you can use the benefits and get out and make your life better through education, which is what I tried to do. The Air Force was a great experience. I got to travel the world, spent 2 years on Guam, the island in the Pacific, which was amazing. My father, who was a World War II vet, served in Iwo Jima, was a young Navy corpsman fighting on destroyers and battleships, was able to come to Guam for a month to spend, and he had been there during the war. So here he was, transfixed 30 years later and experiencing the beauty of the island. So that was really great. The Air Force taught me as an air traffic controller to be able to manage a tremendous amount of challenges equally at the same time, and to deal with crisis situations in a way that it didn't collapse you. And that's what's helped make me successful and what prepared me for my Walmart career, really.
Yeah. So how did you transition from Air Force then to Missouri Southern and a focus on law enforcement?
So I grew up in the Northeast Ohio and Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. So I'm a Northeast guy, grew up between those two areas, graduated high school in Pittsburgh. So when I was in the military and I was looking for a college, I ran into a couple of folks that had come visited us on Guam, and they had gone to Evangel College in Springfield, Missouri.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that looks like a good opportunity. So I went to Evangel and I really enjoyed it, Matt, but I just couldn't afford it. Even with the GI Bill, Evangel was a private university and it was incredibly expensive. So I switched to Drury. It became expensive. I switched to Southwest Missouri State at that time. And then I found Missouri Southern in Joplin. And that's how I got into Missouri Southern. It was the best decision I ever made, once again, during that era of my life. While I was there, Walmart heavily recruited from Missouri Southern, as you know. And I had an opportunity to get an interview 3 months before graduation, and they extended me the offer, and I completed my core classes there and started my Walmart career.
Where did you start? Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, during that time, to make it through college, Matt, I became a police officer with Springfield, Missouri. So I was able to do that and go to college for those 4 years. While I was a police officer in Springfield, we had a contract with Walmart. We would provide security for the stores. So they put us on the payroll. So the advantage I got there was time and service with Walmart was backdated till 82. When I started as a management member in 86, I'd already accrued some time and service with Walmart. So that's how, and believe it or not, the two really didn't have an interplay into me getting the supervisor position. When I was interviewed, they really didn't even know that I had done security work for them at that point. I think it came up, but it wasn't really focused on.
Yeah. So what was your first official position with Walmart, and where were you based?
I was a district loss prevention supervisor, first initial position. Went through training there in Springfield, Missouri area. And then my first duty assignment with Walmart was, they gave me two options: one, Indianapolis, or two, the Panhandle of Florida, based in Fort Walton Beach, Destin. It took me 16 seconds to figure out I could get out of my mouth. Destin, Florida. So I went there, which was, once again, Matt, it's crazy how decisions that you make without a lot of thought, but has enormous ramifications on your life, which tells me that the universe truly does have control over absolutely everything we do. So I picked that decision, not knowing that that was an incredible active hotbed for Mr. Sam Walton. So I go down there and I get established, and I have about 12 stores in my responsibility, and I'm meeting the store managers, the district managers, and that's how I met Sam Walton. Actually, I'd met Sam, Mr. Sam, I should say, during my interview process. And if I could back up real quick, because it's an incredible story,
Please.
but I show up in Bentonville into the vendor office, and I walk in, and it's just one room, and it's got a metal military desk. There's a elderly lady with white hair sitting at the desk. Next to it is a 10-cent coffee machine that you had to put a dime in to get a cup of hot coffee. Then they had chairs that faced that military desk that were multicolored laundromat style chairs that attached to each other. I remember them distinctly because as a kid, I had a time in laundromats, and it reminded me of that. I walked in, I was the only soul in that office on that morning. And I sat in that lobby, and I'm waiting for somebody to come out to interview me. And out through the side door comes who turned out to be Mr. Sam Walton. He walks over, he puts a dime in the coffee machine, he gets a cup of hot coffee, he turns around, scans the room, and he sees me. And he walks up and he says, "Hello, young man, what are you doing here?" And I said, "Well, sir, I'm here for an interview." And he said, "Well, what are you interviewing for?" And I said, "For a loss prevention district supervisor position." He said, "Well, I wish you the best of luck." And he shook my hand. He said, I'm Mr. Sam Walton." And I said, "It's a pleasure to meet you, sir." And he turned around and went back through that door, which turned out to be Executive Row. Fast forward, my last assignment at Walmart, I had that office right past that door on the corner of Executive Row, the one that faces the lobby when you walk in. That first office was mine on the left, the only dual windowed office at Walmart at that time. So when I got to my assignment in Destin, Florida, I get a phone call about 6 weeks in from Mr. Sam's assistant that said, "Can you pick Mr. Sam up in Mobile, Alabama? He's flying into the area." And I said, "Absolutely." So I drove, and I met Mr. Sam at the airport, and we drove the panhandle of Florida because at that time he was investing in condominiums in that area. And that began a multi-year windshield time experience with Mr. Sam that lasted a considerable amount of time.
Hmm.
So I was
Please.
I was his chauffeur.
Yeah.
And I loved it.
So one of my greatest regrets in my professional life, at least, has been, I joined Walmart after Mr. Sam had passed. So I'm able to listen to folks like you talk about some of their favorite stories and the things that they learned from him, but never really had that experience myself. So I love that. You come up through the business during a time of just tremendous growth, and the company trying to figure out how to do things on the fly. Sam's Club wasn't, very old. A super center, prototype didn't even exist when you joined. And I'd love to hear you kind of talk about some of the growing pains in the organization and some of the things that maybe you learned along the way through success or failure.
Sure. Yeah, I will say that when I joined the company, we had about 504 stores in total. Our sales were in the single-digit billion. I think we had just crossed over maybe 3 billion, if I remember correctly, which was an astronomical figure for the 1986. But the 500 and some stores, you look today at the thousands, tens of thousands, if you take into effect international. The first story I tell is my first week with Walmart. The loss prevention division had a meeting in Bentonville in the auditorium. Auditorium had just been unveiled, and we're all in there. There's probably 40 of us, and Dave Gorman, my mentor, the former vice president of Walmart loss prevention, who has passed, by the way, gets up on stage, and mind you, I've been with the company less than a week, and he says, as kicking off the meeting, "Half of you probably won't be at this meeting at the conclusion on Thursday." And the reason is because Walmart had come down with a consolidation. They were going through and they were reorganizing and restructuring. So I looked to the guy next to me, who was my supervisor, and I said, "I've been here a week. Do I need to look for another job? Do I need to update my resume? I'm just out of college. My wife is pregnant. What do I do?" And he said, "We'll figure it out by the end of the week." Well, I made the cut, but half of the people in that room didn't make the cut. And I learned initially from that experience that Walmart had a plan of turnover, and it was positive turnover. And it not only challenged you to do the absolute best you could do every single day, but it also sent notice to those people that thought that they could just slack and mail the check in. There was none of that in those days, Matt. We were all mavericks and we were pioneers, and we were creating the future of Walmart at that very time. Our job was asset protection, loss prevention, but we worked way beyond that. We were involved in operations, merchandising, logistics, beyond loss prevention. We were team players, and nobody could say that's not my job. You jumped in and you got it done. If I walked into a store that was a messy or had a spill or the action alley looked bad, I'd grab a broom and I'd sweep it. My district manager would do the same thing. That's how we grew the business. And we took care of the folks and the people, and we listened and we cared and we shared ideas. And we literally were students of our employees, of our associates at that time.
Yeah.
So those are the lessons that I took away. That's what made me greater and stronger, and made me challenge my people to do more and never, ever rest on their laurels.
That's one of the reasons I fell in love with the company, when I did, because there was this recognition that Walmart at the time was the ultimate meritocracy, where it didn't matter where you went to school, it didn't matter, nothing mattered. It just, if you were willing to work hard and with integrity and play well with others, there was no limit whatsoever to what you could accomplish in your career. And no better place was that illustrated than walking executive row and seeing the people that started out as hourly associates and worked their way up to the organization. It just, you always knew that there was just no limit whatsoever to what you could accomplish and what you would get to experience in your career if you would do those things.
And everybody worked together and worked hard at propelling each other. We would lift everyone, and because we knew we had to do that to make a greater company. And that's everyone. I don't care if you were somebody working in maintenance in a store, or if you were a department manager or just a part-time hourly cashier. We did absolutely everything we could to recognize, support, listen, and help those individuals improve their career. And like you said, many of them today are running large parts of the organization.
Yeah. So as the company grew and became more complicated, obviously you grew and took on more and more responsibility. Kind of talk about kind of where you were with Walmart when you decided to move on.
So I'd had a great career there, started out as a district supervisor and then promoted up through the ranks and ended up becoming the director over the supercenter division, which was at that time the new advanced format vehicle for us. So I worked in that arena for a considerable amount of time. During that phase, I was approached to become the vice president of training and development, only because of some programs that I had initiated on the side. To help the company. I was put on a fast track, the first fast track program that Walmart ever designed. David Glass, our president at that time, CEO, had developed the fast track program. There were 7 of us executives selected, and I was one of those. Part of that, we had to design the neighborhood market concept, and myself and 2 other of the fast track executives were tasked by Rob Walton to do that, and we did. So I had all those wonderful transformational events happen. But then we had some changes in organization that were ongoing. And I, at that point, had many companies calling on me. I had 18 years in with the company. I knew that my progression was limited by Dave being in the vice president position. I had turned down the vice president of training and development at the advice of one of the executives that was at the company. And at that time, Home Depot came calling with an incredible opportunity as a senior vice president over their risk platform. And talking to Dave Gorman, talking to a number of the executives at that time, I decided to make that decision and went over to Home Depot.
What was that like? Because a lot has been written over the years about the similarity in culture. I know that there's been a lot of benchmarking over the years between the 2 organizations. So was it an easy transition or was it difficult?
It was supposed to be an easy transition. That was the blueprint. I was interviewed by Arthur Blank, one of the founders.
Right.
Flown in, took up to his personal suite, and we talked for about 8 hours in his suite one evening until about 2 a.m. So they laid out a plan where I was going to take over the risk enterprise, and then I was going to have a succession plan within 2 years to be promoted to a president of a division in the operations group. Because of all my cross-operational experience, while I was at Walmart, Mr. Sam directly promoted me into operations. So I left asset protection for a number of years and worked in the store operation area in Mr. Sam's guidance. So Walmart knew that, Home Depot knew that, Arthur Blank knew that, Bernie Marcus knew that. So that was the transitional plan. 4 days after I started at Home Depot, both Bernie Marcus and Arthur Blank were ousted by the main financier of Home Depot. And I found out by going up to a meeting with Arthur walking down the hallway towards his office and seeing all his artwork lined up against the wall. And I figured they were just painting his office. But when I made the turn into his office, his assistant had this grayish white look. And she said, "Keith, I'm so sorry, but Arthur Blank is no longer here, no longer with the company."
Hmm.
So in that swift first week of my time at Home Depot, things dramatically changed. They brought in one of the worst leaders, you can't even call him a leader, one of the worst individuals who had a
Hmm.
GE experience
Hmm.
into the CEO-ship that began to start the demise of Home Depot during that era.
Yeah, Bob Nardelli, right, from
Yeah,
GE.
that was the man.
Yeah,
Not good experiences.
yeah.
So many stories I could tell you that I won't tell you that
Hmm.
told me that this organization was and this executive team was going to end up in an Enron type situation if they
Hmm.
weren't careful. And I fought that tooth and nail. And ultimately, because of my fight in that regard, after 2 years, I exercised my change of leadership clause in my package, made sure all my people were secure, and left the depot because I knew it was not headed to a good place. And I was accurate, and they ended up ousting him several years later. And now they're back on their feet, which is exciting. But it was a dark, dark time for the depot that era.
Yeah. Now, was starting a company something that had kind of been on your mind for a long time, or was it just maybe a decision after extended tenure, I guess, with the greatest retailer on the face of the earth, and then the follow up with Home Depot, that maybe you just didn't want to work for another big company again? Tell us about the decision that you
Sure.
went through to start Nav1gate.
That's a great question, Matt, because when I left the depot, I had many opportunities and even interviewed with a number of companies, HEB, Sears at that
Hmm.
time, which was still strong. HEB was looking for a leader, and then Staples at that time. But going through the interview processes, I realized that I needed some type of a break. Dave Gorman and I had always talked about post-retirement starting a joint consulting practice. And
Hmm.
that was our plan until he died. And then, and I was at Home Depot when he ultimately got ill. And when I started my consulting gig, shortly after that, he had passed. But it was because of a group of former Walmart execs that had retired, that had started a consulting firm called DRS. It was located right there
I
on.
remember
Yes, Jimmy Wright,
the Wright brothers. Yeah.
Leslie Wright, Lolan Mackey were the three founders. And they called me and said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Well, I'm here at Depot." And they said, "Come leave them and let's consult together. We need your practice vertical in our consulting firm." So when I did. I went and visited with them. I set up shop there, and for about 3 years worked in partnership with them. And after gaining my sea legs, I decided, you know what, I've got some expanded visions that I want to do that would infringe on what DRS was doing, because I was compartmentalized there to just asset protection. And I'm really an operations guy. So by opening up my own practice, I was able to expand into the operations development with businesses. And that's how I launched into what was the Retail Loss Prevention Group that I rebranded 3 years ago to Nav1gate, to once again just identify a changing shift of focus.
So in the early days of the business that would become Nav1gate, where did you focus early on?
Early on, my focus was working directly with retailers. So I would go, I had a large contract with Ahold USA and all their banners. I did work with a company called Meyer,
Mhm.
Kroger, and a number of other retailers that I would go and help provide the guidance that they needed to become more like Walmart. So I did that for a number of years. And then one day I happened to be at a trade show, and a gentleman walked up to me and said, "Hey, I own a safe company, and I've invented this digital keypad. And I think companies in the retail vertical would really benefit from it." And I said, "Well, funny you should mention that, because I know the safe buyer at Walmart. Him and I have been friends for numbers of years. What if I put the two of you in touch with each other?" Which I did. They ended up making a deal. And the safe owner came back to me and said, I want to bring you on board so that you can help me get into Home Depots and Sears and Kmart's and Kroger's,
Hmm.
which I did. So that started organically, me working with solution providers. And in the past 15 years, my emphasis shifted there. And now I keep about 4 of those solution providers on constant retainer, and along with my retail mix. So it's a great eclectic mix of business dealings and transformational work.
Huh. That's great. So your business has grown in that way quite by accident.
By accident again. There's a lot of accidents in my life, Matt.
Happy
A lot
accidents,
of
right?
beautiful accidents, right? And
Yeah.
through the pandemic, I was on a call last night with a dear friend in Bentonville who said, you know, how's your business going in the pandemic? And the wonderful thing about my business is when things are bad, my business is exceptionally great. When things are good, my business is strong. So I'm in a real recession-proof type business. If you think about it, Matt, people that are needing to improve their profitability and squeeze extra profit out of a dollar need me more whenever the economic situation is in a downturn. When it's
Yeah.
a flush economic situation, they want to retain more of that excess cash that they have. So they want to put in and spend on solutions to do that. So in both sides of the fence, I'm relevant. And that's what's been exciting. And it's a real robust time and has been. My business has grown the last 20 years exceptionally. So really excited about that, proud of that.
Yeah. Now talk about your team, because you've got folks scattered all over the world.
I do. I've got a team in Ecuador. They manage my South America division, and we have a place in Quito, Ecuador. I've got individuals that I use throughout the United States that most of them are retired Walmart execs that love to just play when they can and then work when they want. And that works perfectly for my business. Carla Murray is one of the dearest ladies that work through the operations development team, work closely with many of the executives today. And there are numbers of folks like Carla that are on my team and at my disposal when we need them for project work.
Now, am I mistaken, or is Carla's an attorney, right?
No, Carla actually worked in the operations development group.
Okay.
And she worked with John Ferner, good old John, and I love John to death. John came to the operations development team right out of college. You know, John's father worked for the company, and I worked with John's father. So when John showed up, he was just a young little punk, and had the opportunity to work directly with my group in asset protection as a divisional, and he was assigned to my group. So I would give John tasks, and he would work on operational development touch points. So to see John rise through the ranks and become the success that he is, and I truly believe will ultimately become the next CEO of Walmart Corporate, is exciting. I get a chance to have breakfast with him on occasion when I get to Bentonville, but I still remind him of his days of a young college grad working in my group, and I give him a hard time about that. But Carla worked with John during that time in the operations development team. So I have a number of those folks that have left Walmart that I work with.
So is your company at a point now, it seems like it is, from what you've said, where are you out there prospecting, new clients, or are companies coming to you now with problems and opportunities? Yeah. Talk about that.
I can't prospect at this point because we really are at maximum capacity for what I want the company to be. So essentially, and the way that I've worked it and always worked it, Matt, is out of 10 companies that come and approach me, I may partner with 1 or 2 because the vetting process I have is incredibly intense. And here's the reason. I only have 2 things. I have my integrity and relationship capital. Either of those 2 things get tarnished and my business model collapses. So the companies I partner with have to exemplify the standards that Nav1gate demands. There are a lot of companies that want to work with us, but not a lot of companies that qualify to work with us. So it's word of mouth. It's companies that know of us, and the ones that meet the vetting process, we will have extended discussion with and possibly come to an agreement.
One of the things that I talk about with suppliers is obviously with Walmart and other retailers not opening nearly as many stores as they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. The point that you made earlier about how important it is to be squeezing every bit of productivity out of that out of that space and out of that business, it becomes critically important, both on the sales side and then also on more on your side of the business, if you will. Just trying to squeeze every bit of productivity out that you possibly can. So, and what other ways are you seeing kind of the game change beyond kind of a deceleration in the number of units that are opening, a movement toward online retail? I probably don't want to offer much commentary on just kind of what's going on societally, but that has got to be playing a big part in what you're doing as well right now, helping companies, secure their assets and because there've been a lot of tough times, right? That we've all witnessed.
Absolutely. We are really going through a transformational retail environment right now. And the biggest impactor today is the cashierless checkout situation that's going to revolutionize the future of how we shop. Take away the fact of the online shopping, because that's already had its impact and will continue to impact retail. The retailers that are in business today have survived that initial blunt. Now they're having to deal with the cashierless checkout, which, if they don't have systemic deployments and analytics and AI to help identify whether or not an item has been properly scanned by the customer, is going to be the decision, is going to be the differentiator whether they're in business tomorrow or not. Walmart has invested tremendously in external and internal processes and analytics to determine if you actually scan what you take to the self-checkout. Other companies that I know of and know are in business and self-checkout are nowhere near that. So their shrink is going to be tremendously impacted. And in the grocery industry, the profits are razor thin.
That's right.
So that's the challenge that every retailer is facing today. How much to invest, what to invest. Do I invest in the right technology? But everything has to be accounted for at the front. The next thing that we have are revolutionary changes in what I consider to be a political climate where we're seeing a lot of liberal type laws being placed that's raising the limits on shoplifting and theft charges. If you look at some of the states in the West Coast and some of the cities, they've raised it upwards of 5 to 10 to 15,000 minimum before it's a felony. So that's why you see people going into these retailers and just grabbing goods and walking out the door. That, coupled with the fact that the prosecutors and the police force is not going to respond, and the fact that retailers are telling their employees not to engage, it's becoming a retail war. And there's no defense to that. The only defense matter: stronger laws, greater police response, and the ability of companies to have technologies in place to help secure what those individuals are taking. And in most of these situations, all three of those are missing. So what's going to happen is those retailers are going to close shop in those metropolitan areas, and they're going to have to go strictly online.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because it's something, again, that you see from the outside, and you just wonder if these companies are even paying attention, and they must be paying attention, but just to let it go without even putting up a fight, like you said, these retailers have got tremendous influence over over legislators. Why is it that we've become so lax on enforcement? It just seems like we're just giving the business away.
The business is being given away in certain areas, and it's so unfortunate. And the reason is because I think it's misappropriation of spend dollars in those cities and municipalities. They don't want to invest in law enforcement. They don't want to deal with what they consider to be nuisance cases, which is retail theft is a nuisance case, when in all actuality, what they don't understand is that they are essentially crippling the backbone of those stores that provide the goods for their families. Where are they going to go grocery shop if the grocery stores are closed? Where are they going to get fresh food and produce? Where are they going to go buy their TVs if they have nowhere to go? It's all going to have to be online. And that's going to be unfortunate for that area. But that's going to be the price that they pay. Now, in other parts of the country, we have been able to hold on to our legislative and our enacted laws that keep people honest, to a degree to where retailers can sustain the loss. But even then, we have to put in greater systems and analytics. I've got a company that I work with called Salient Solutions in Austin, Texas. They're a software house, and all they do, Matt, is build software technologies to be able to foresee crimes before they happen. And when they happen, give immediate alerts to the associates. That's what we have to have so that decisions can be made, losses can be stopped immediately. Those are the types of technologies that everybody's going to have to start investing in.
Yeah. What an exciting time to be, and I've said this 100 times during the, these conversations. What an exciting time to be in this business, to have lived through the kind of the birth and maturing of the supercenter division as Walmart and other retailers tried to figure out grocery. I mean, that was such a radical transformation at the time. And then to see retailers begin tinkering with e-commerce, 20 years ago, and spend tremendous amounts of money failing, but getting a little bit closer to right every time. And then, I worked with a company called Optimal Robotics at Walmart, a Canadian company, on the very first self-checkout. That was back in 1988, what did I say? 98, 99. Yeah, 98, 99. And then to see how far it's come now with artificial intelligence. And like you said, making sure that the nothing's going into bags that hadn't been, scanned and paid for. It makes you wonder what's next. And so what do you see as next? I mean, obviously moving more and more toward self-checkout and intelligent stores to try to control theft. But what else are you seeing kind of big picture, next wave of all of this?
It's in the next 5 to 10 years, we will see essentially a larger footprint version of what you're seeing on the pick and go type of store platform today, where everything is going to be monitored through AI, through a plethora of cameras, as well as weighting mechanisms. Your point of sale is going to be automatic when you cross the threshold. All of your financial data is going to have to be pre-provided to a retailer before you're able to go in and do anything. But you're just going to be able to walk in, grab it off the shelf, and take it out. Therefore, your shoplifting situations are going to be somewhat mitigated, but it's not going to stop somebody from just running in, shelf sweeping, grabbing it, and running out. That's what our leading edge solution providers are working on today. How do we prevent? How do we predict? How do we react and respond to those situations where some unauthorized individual comes in to take goods without a prepayment mechanism? Some of those technologies could be a door that's open with your payment card. Therefore, the only way somebody could get in would be tailgating. So therefore, you've got to now devise a mechanism to be able to stagger the admittance and the ingress and egress, which is going to be highly technologically evolved, because you still have a lot of people coming and going. So when you start peeling the layers of that onion on how it sounds so simple, okay, yeah, we have prepaid data. We walk in, we grab it, we walk out. That's great for the honest customer. But then when you start looking at the defensibilities that have to be built, Matt, it's a whole subculture of things we're working on today to try to ensure that those defensibilities are in tomorrow. But that's what our future is going to look like, that plus online. It was fascinating. Today, I watched a video that John Furner posted on LinkedIn about the zipline drone launch system that's being built in Pea Ridge, Arkansas.
Yeah.
5 years ago, if somebody would have told John, hey, John, you're going to build a zipline drone launch facility in Pea Ridge, Arkansas, he'd have probably turned around and looked at him and had him arrested.
Right.
Now it's modern.
Oh, why not?
Engineering. Why not?
Yeah.
In 5 years from today, I assure you, Matt, there are going to be technologies that we haven't even thought of that are blueprints on somebody's desk. And that's the exciting part about this retail experience.
Yeah, for sure. I want to switch gears radically, recognizing that we've been going for a while, and I want to be real respectful of your time. But you come across, even from the very beginning of this conversation, as a guy who is just really grateful for the tough experiences that you had at the beginning of your life. You talked about how the universe kind of has everything worked out, and you seem for the ups and for the downs and the experiences that you've had and the disappointments, leaving a great gig at Walmart to be disappointed by Home Depot. You just seem to have just a lot of gratitude. And I want to spend a few minutes kind of talking about you as a human, what's important to you, the world as you see it. And then ultimately, how is it that you want to be remembered as a human being as this life continues?
Sure. I had the wonderful opportunity. I had the disappointing opportunity of ending a relationship about 4 years ago. That was a long marriage that I struggled with, Matt, as many people do.
Yes.
A good person, just not my person. And um, through that transformation, then ended up meeting somebody who has literally changed my life. I have always been grateful, and I've always had tremendous gratitude and humility, and I've been thankful for what I've done. But I was missing something, and that part that I was missing was the universal experience on how this energy, the world, everything is interactive, and we all have influence on each other, and we all have a responsibility to make others better, happier. And my wife today, Soraya, she's a Reiki master. She is incredibly intuitive. And she has just shown me a brand new level of positivity, love, and hope. And for that, that's what I'm most grateful for. What I've learned is you're not always going to get things right. You're not. You have to admit it when you don't. You have to fix it. You have to go forward, learn from that mistake, but do not look back on tomorrow. Any energy that we use looking back in the past robs us from looking towards this wonderful future. And that's what I would leave most people with. Please don't dwell in the past, focus on the future, and try to make somebody's day better each and every chance that you get. And that's really how I live my life. And I've been blessed by that.
Yeah, that's great. Keith, this has been so much fun. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you making the time to do this. You've not aged a day, so whatever you're doing, it's working. Congratulations
You bet.
on your success and your happiness, and just I wish the very best for you going forward. Keith Aubele, founder, president, and CEO of Nav1gate Group. Thank you so much. I hope you have a great day, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Matt, and I appreciate everything you've done, and I've enjoyed watching your career, and you've done so many trailblazing things. Ethan Walton was revolutionary when it started. Your company today and all that you do in helping solution providers and individuals in the retail vertical become more successful can't go unnoticed and unmentioned. I follow you, and I've always followed you, and look forward to working with you going forward in any way that we can.
Thank you so much, Keith. That means a lot. Hope you have a great day.
Thank you, sir. Bye-bye now.
So long.